Okay. Yep, there we go. We are back. We're going live with a special edition of the Dre Lax podcast. So, for this one, we are talking about the home cities. Home cities just dropped. It's going to be interesting. We'll see what that means for the league going forward. Once again, I'm Dre, hosting the Dre Lax podcast, hosted by the CDB Multimedia Network, where you can catch the Sucio Boys podcast, the Sucio Sports podcast, obviously the Dre Lax podcast, the Aim High podcast, a different angle, Four Corners of Commentary, Shogun Soccer Sit Down, and the CDB podcast. This time, I am joined by my good friend Sloan Kettering, as well as my friend Brian Knows Lax. Ahun should be joining us while we keep this going. But gentlemen, first off, how are y'all? How are you guys doing about how you guys feeling about the news of the home cities dropping?
Man, feeling good. It happened. We here.
They did a thing.
Right?
An event happened.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a good thing, but they did a thing.
It's tears, man. It's some tears. It's some Anthony Anderson tears on the timeline, man.
Yo, especially them folks in the Midwest. Folks in the Midwest are pressed right now.
Man, I got the Chicago Bears and no PLL team, man. That hurts.
Like, how did Chicago not get a PLL? Like, the Redwoods would have been perfect in Chicago.
Yeah, man.
Hey, man, listen. I'm just, like, first off, let me just talk about how this announcement even came to be. First off, they said they were announcing this at 2 p.m. Yeah, I don't know if ESPN was behind or whatever, but they didn't officially start announcing. They didn't even get to the segment until almost 2:30, almost like 2:15, 2:30. So everybody's in the chat like, hey, dog, y'all are talking about the Steelers and Browns. We don't care about this. Get to the PLL news. Because I'm in Brian, I don't know about you, but I'm in the PLL Discord.
Oh, okay.
And so, everybody's like, man, they talking about football. Don't nobody care about that right now. It's Tuesday. Yo, they were getting them out the way. I was like, yo. Because, there are some people that work in the PLL in that Discord. And so I was like, hey, dog, be careful before they ban you from the games. They're going to get you out the paint. But, yeah, dog, the Midwest folks are perturbed, to say the least. That's my word of the day calendar. They're perturbed. But real quick, for everybody that doesn't know, we're gonna list off these cities, and then whenever Ahun gets in here, he's gonna elbow drop off the top rope because we know that's how he gets down. So we have the Boston Cannons, which was a shock to no one because the Cannons originated in Boston when the MLL was active. Next up, we have the Whipsnakes going to Maryland. We have the Redwoods going to California. The Chaos ended up in Carolina. What part of Carolina they did not specify.
I mean, it's to Carolina, so who knows?
Exactly. And then Waterdogs ended up in Philly. The New York got the Atlas. Again, it was not specified where they're going to be at. And then Utah got the Archers, and then the Denver Outlaws are resurrected from their MLL grave, and they are back. Now, gentlemen, what is your initial reaction to those cities or those placements for those teams?
Now that I look at it, it's not as bad as I wanted to be mad at it. It's all East Coast, Eastern Seaboard teams that's right close to each other. So that's cool. I'm not mad at it. Now
Brian,
the West Coast, that's a little spaced out. They're not specific about California Redwoods. They're gonna be there. They're just like Utah. They're gonna be there. Yeah, we're gonna show up, big dog. But we ain't gonna tell you where exactly we're gonna show up. It's a surprise.
Yeah, they're gonna just go from being in Inglewood to San Francisco, and then they're gonna pop up in San Diego.
It's fluid, as Stephen A would say.
Hey, Brian, what about you? What's your reaction?
Man, I got the same thoughts. I'm like, it's safe. I'm like looking at all these teams. I'm like, man, they ain't really. I thought they was gonna come from the top rope with at least one team. I'm like, they gonna put somebody in maybe like Minnesota or something. They're like, nah, we know where our money is.
put somebody in like Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky.
Right, man. I saw people, man. People was out here thinking they was gonna go to Idaho or something. I'm like, man, they might try to do it, but yeah, they just went real
Bro,
safe.
they ain't about to go to Idaho. Like,
I thought they at least might consider Alabama. Alabama ain't got a pro team for nothing. They'll support the shit out of that.
Well, because they got the Georgia Swarm, so I'm surprised they didn't try to do anything in Georgia. You know, it's so like looking at it from like a logistic standpoint, it makes sense because, like again, like we said, Boston, like the Cannons originate in Boston, so like I get that. New York is a hotbed for lacrosse, so I can understand that. Putting a team there, but there are questions. Much like Sloan alluded to when he talked about Carolina and California, you say New York. Are you going to rotate through New York for the season, or like where in New York are you based in? Are you going to be in Long Island? Are you going to be in New York City? Are you going to be where Syracuse is? Like, where in New York are you going to be?
That's the thing, man. That's
Brooklyn?
The thing.
Are you the Brooklyn Atlas?
But then you said New York, like being from Syracuse, I'm from upstate. We don't claim New York City. They don't claim us. Like they talking about cows and you say upstate. Look, so what are we saying? Then I'm watching the video. I'm like, bro, why are we showing the subway? I know about the F train. That don't mean nothing to me. Exactly. Like Albany's not Syracuse, which is in Rochester. It's not Buffalo. Long Island's not coming to Rochester. So I'm like, I see what you're doing here, but you can't be having a New York Stock Exchange talking about New York, showing Madison Square Garden. What does that mean to me? Being upstate. Like, I'm like, okay. And it's like Sloan said, Carolina. Like, if I'm in South Carolina, I'm claiming y'all. Like, what's happening?
Well, like the thing,
you got a lot of territory. You got North and South Carolina.
Exactly. All of California, like that's a big area. Inglewood's not wine country.
Is it smart doing it that way? Because like now you're not pigeonholed in your city. And so each year you can have your, because like with the home cities, they're like the fans are guaranteed at least 1 to 2 games in that city. And so now with you being the New York Atlas, you can do 1 game in Albany, you can do 1 game in like NYC, or you can do 1 game in Buffalo and 1 game in like Syracuse. Like
if they smart, that's what they do.
That's what I would do. That's how you would get more money, because I'd go up and down California from the Redwoods. I'd do like college towns like Stanford. I'd go do a game in Stanford, then do a game in like LA Coliseum, and then 1 in San Diego.
Yep.
And like 1 in Oakland. Because they got a football and baseball stadium with a raggedy one that's falling apart. You can play across in there, bitch.
Well, that's the other question. Where like regardless of the cities, now what stadium do you play in? Because previously, like for example, the Outlaws, which we're going to get to them, the Outlaws played at Mile High, but you know the complaint for like the MLL and for other fans was that Mile High never really like was like looking filled. Like it wasn't like there were people there, but it wasn't like the stadium wasn't looking filled up, so to speak.
You can't fill a football stadium for lacrosse.
Right.
Yeah. But like, does New York have like, New York has like,
they have
like soccer stadiums. Yeah.
Like, yeah, you can, the soccer stadium. That's why I was surprised like Florida, like Orlando didn't get a team.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been cool with the Orlando Chaos or something like that.
Yeah, because like think about it, they have Miami International.
Right.
No, well, Orlando has Orlando OFC. They have a team. There's a soccer club in Orlando.
Wait, isn't New York building that soccer stadium for like a soccer team that they're getting?
New York has a soccer team.
I remember, I know that, but I'm talking about like, wasn't it? Weren't they saying that New York was building like there was a soccer stadium getting built in like I remember we were talking about like last year. It was like Matt was talking to us about it. Like it was some part of like it was either like Brooklyn or something like that.
I should have put my Ryder Guernsey jersey on. That would.
Yo, Sloan's just mad that that the Redwoods are not in New Orleans.
Bro, that's the only thing I'm really mad about. Because I'm a Ryder Guernsey fan. So.
Well, look, if you really want to expand and you really want to say fuck it, let's expand, then you gotta, if you're gonna put something in a true growth market, obviously do what makes sense business wise. But if you want to have a chance to just kind of shoot your shot and grow as a business, you got to put your team in a city like New Orleans or Austin or somewhere where like you guys have kind of been around, but you guys haven't been in, just to see what can happen.
I mean, they should shoot. What they should do is do that All-Star game here.
Right.
Okay.
Because, like, you might not be able to do it in the Superdome, but you can talk to Tulane University. They have UMN Stadium, which is a big-ass 30,000 seat arena. I mean, football stadium. You could do it there, or it's places to do it. It's just I'd have to see what they the way they made it is based on their data. They ran the numbers, and that's where those were probably those were the 8 top places where
they sold out.
Go
because they
sell out in the Northeast,
mm-hmm.
like Boston. That's lacrosse country right there.
Because this is going into year 6, and so I feel like before they placed these cities, they had to look at the last like 5 years of metrics.
Right.
Yeah, Brian. If out of these 8 teams, what team would you have put somewhere different? And I guess like why, so to speak.
So it was interesting because I'm kind of surprised, but I'm not, that Carolina got the Chaos. I thought the Chaos they would do. I thought they were going to put 2 teams in New York. I thought they'd do an upstate team and a downstate team with so many of those guys playing for the Buffalo Bandits, being like Western New York, Central New York guys. I thought that they'd end up there. So I'm kind of, it's interesting to see them there. So I think that's the most surprising, because I saw Carolina Chaos. I'm like, oh, that's a little, that kind of came from left field for me. So for me, I think that was the biggest surprise. And also, like you said, the Midwest just being completely left out.
Is it a surprise?
Disregarded.
Like they said, like y'all, like at all. They said, "Now we good." Nobody. So I'm like, man, because I swear, I'm like Ohio, Chicago would get something, because those are still big markets.
But once I saw that it was Carolina, I started thinking, oh, Duke.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because they do got Duke players. Because the Chaos, how many of the Brian? I don't know if you know, but like, where does like a decent amount of the Chaos players like originate from, like college or like from their like NLL teams?
So originally, when they had when they first started the teams, they were the team that was kind of just like a mixture of people. So they had a lot of native players are from Syracuse, like Western New York, Canada. So that's like where so they don't have there's not a specific place, but for whatever reason, the last couple years, I think with the Chaos, they got like 5 or 6 players that played for the Buffalo Bandits, and I'm pretty sure all of them live in Buffalo.
Yeah, because
I know Dane is in Buffalo.
Yeah, because Dane is in Buffalo, and Josh Byrne plays for the Bandits, and then I think
Ian McKay's in Buffalo.
Yep,
Chase Fraser's in Buffalo. Togo, he was on the Diogo was on the practice squad or whatever. He was in and out, but yeah, all those Buffalo guys. So yeah, so that was the same thing, kind of like we knew the Whipsnakes were going to Maryland, but it's the same thing where your biggest stars are all living in this one market. So I'm kind of surprised they were just like, now we're not worried about that.
I'm surprised that I guess for me, I'm just surprised that like Ohio didn't get a team, because Nat St. Laurent, the coach of the Redwoods, he coaches in Ohio.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised that they didn't try to keep him up in there. Pause. But I'm surprised they didn't like keep him like near Ohio. And they loved playing at Ohio State. And Ohio State,
their stadium is dope.
Where they were playing at, that is the most beautiful field that I've ever seen.
Built for lacrosse. Like they want you to, Jack Myers wants them to be there. Like that was crazy. I'm like, y'all just gonna leave that?
Yeah, and Ohio has a college lacrosse team. So like I don't know. There were just some teams that there were just some locations that I was like, huh, interesting. I felt like a lot of these city placements were like very safe, like from a business perspective, which again expected. But like I just felt like there wasn't any like risky kind of market that was listed.
Yeah,
Maybe
are you guys surprised about Utah? Because Utah, I was kind of like, oh, I know they shown well, but to give them an actual city, I'm kind of surprised about that.
Getting there when we get to the Archers. Wait, Sloan, go ahead.
I mean, maybe they can do that with the expansion in the next couple of years. Go to some risky spots.
I don't. Well, there goes with New York getting the Atlas. There goes everybody's hope with the Lizards coming back.
Yeah, man.
You think this? So yeah, Sloan. To what you were saying, if these 8 cities do well, then they can start doing a little bit more like risky. Then maybe the Midwest gets a team and stuff. I mean,
I would do it like this. So for like the next 4 years, you got the league set up the way it is. Do a all-star game in the cities that were 9, 10, 11, and 12.
Yep.
And see how the all-star game does. And then go from there.
Because the championship's always played in DC, right, Brian?
No, they play in Philly.
Philly, yeah.
Yeah, was it the
but
Philly
with the
Union
Whipsnakes
Stadium?
being in Philly, do you think they'll flip it? Because the All-Star weekend has happened in DC a couple times, and I know that like they like doing it in DC, but like this was the first year I think that this hasn't happened in DC. Because I remember that DC weekend was crazy, but I know now that they're doing the 6-on-6 tournament in DC again. Now that they're doing it out there, I think the All-Star game is going to just move. So now I guess, yeah, like Sloan said, you can do whatever city was 9 this year and then do 10 and then do 11 and then do 12 just to kind of see what can happen.
I didn't know that the championship was played in Philly. Since Philly has a team, to make it fair, move the championship every year.
Yeah.
Like the Super Bowl is in a different city. So you could do 9 and 10. 9 gets the All-Star game. 10 gets the championship game 1 year. And then the next year, 11 gets it, and 12 gets the championship, and see how it goes from there and run the numbers from that.
If they want to have a championship,
They should really hire me.
Right.
Hey, look, when the job applications open, I'm sending them y'all's way. But like, if they want to see a All-Star game sell out, you gotta go to Canada. Like either like Toronto or something like you like because Canada's crazy about lacrosse.
But you go where the buzz is though. Like you go where you know you're gonna get the bottom dollar. Nobody's gonna want to travel to Canada if it's like the weather is bad. But people don't mind fucking going. Miami, Orlando. People don't mind going to New Orleans. People do not mind going to Texas where it's warm at. I'm surprised Texas didn't get a team.
Yeah, I thought Dallas was gonna get the Atlas. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, that would have been good because they've been playing at the Star at the Washington Commanders fan in me doesn't even want to mention the Cowboys, but yeah, because they've been playing at the Star the last 2 years. It's a built-in stadium that they've used and they have a relationship with.
And then what's it called? Philly got the Waterdogs, which wasn't surprising at all. Because Philly getting the Waterdogs and Maryland getting the Whipsnakes, the reason that wasn't surprising is because the bulk of their rosters for Maryland, a lot of their players played at either Maryland or Duke. And then for Philly, a lot of their players originate from Penn State, Princeton, Penn, or something like some university near there. So that makes sense. You're just sending them boys home pretty much.
It's not sending them home. It's drawing for those crowds.
Yeah,
true. Maryland goes crazy about lacrosse because you don't now, mind you, you just don't have the University of Maryland. You got Georgetown over there too, and then you've got Loyola.
Yeah, Hopkins.
And then you got Hopkins. So a lot of those boys came from that area, and then and like every time they've played at John Hopkins or the University of Maryland, that stadium is packed. So yeah, like Sloan said, go where the money is.
You go where the money is and where you don't have to advertise as much as you think you would in certain markets about the team. Then
Now the Carolina, the chaos getting Carolina, that one surprised me because I'm just like, Dallas was right there, like Houston or San Antonio was right there.
Looked at in San Antonio. San Antonio is a small market that would come out and support that because they have pretty much nothing else to do.
But like, I was just like, well, okay, I guess we're going to Carolina. I don't have the numbers on that. I don't have the metrics. I don't know how well they did in Carolina. I'm assuming that weekend they must have sold out. I'm guessing. Brian, do you have any guesses as to why they chose Carolina?
So they just built that the soccer stadium that they played in was it Legion? I think it's called Legion Memorial Stadium or something like that. And that's where the Charlotte Hounds from the MLO were supposed to play. And so that stadium they just did within the last like 1 or 2 years. I was actually because I remember watching it.
Forgot the Hounds existed.
But they didn't have great, but the attendance wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. So like it was like a fair amount, but I don't think it was a sellout by any means either. So I think it's like you guys said, it's digging into that Duke, North Carolina fan bases that are already there, so they're like, we know we can at least fill up the stadium.
Exactly. So so obviously, Lacrosse has been here before because we had the major lacrosse league before the PLL. So Lacrosse has been here before. What do you think is going to be the difference maker between the PLL succeeding where the MLL failed? Like, what's going to be like? Do you think it's easier now to market and to like get support for leagues and startup teams than it was back in like what 05, 06, and 07 when they were doing the shit?
I'm not familiar with the MLL. I just got into lacrosse like a year ago, maybe.
See, but that's dope. That's dope.
I think that where it would thrive, where MLL failed, is marketing now, and promotion is different. They have a deal with ESPN, which is phenomenal. If you're doing ESPN, you can get 1 million plus eyes on you every weekend because that's what ESPN does. It just pulls in numbers by itself. They have branched out and gotten partnerships with more urban known stars.
Method Man.
Method Man has a hand in the PLL now, so a lot of people are going to flock to it just because Method Man has a. You all right over there, bro?
Yeah, I'm good.
You over there scratching and stuff like a fish?
Nah, I was adjusting my socks.
But no, they got a lot of people would just flow to it because of Method Man and his branding. And also, if they allow weed, then you got a built-in brand there because Method Man owns his own marijuana company. Well, I got to stop saying marijuana. Weed cannabis company. So that's another partnership. That's more money to bring in without doing much.
That's not bad. And you know what's great about the ESPN deal, because of the fact that one game, like basically with it being on ESPN, where ESPN benefits is that for some of the games, in order to watch or to rewatch, you have to have ESPN Plus. But if you remember that ESPN Plus has a bundle deal with Disney where you get Hulu and ESPN Plus with your Disney Plus subscription, and with the fact that Disney, I think to some degree, has a hand in the PLL. I'll have to check that. But I know Bill Belichick and WWE are listed as people that have a financial involvement with the PLL as well. So with, like you said, with that far-reaching spread, I don't like these companies and these people aren't going to invest in something that's doomed to fail.
Right.
Looking in my mind, I'm like, wait, a lot of these cities are in states that allow marijuana. I mean, cannabis. So
yeah.
Think about it, like that could be a back end deal too.
If a cannabis company starts backing them, because right now, like when they celebrate the championship wins, they usually celebrate with cigars. So, man, if I don't know what the rule is with like lighting up a blunt on TV is, but man,
You saw what the Raiders did last week. Max
yeah.
Crosby was smoking the backwood.
Hey, listen, if you can get the players to start doing that for the championship celebrations, oof. Or honestly, if I don't know who provides the champagne for the championship winning teams.
There's a deal.
Huh?
It's all promotion. It's all marketing.
I'm just saying, Luke Belair or anybody could really get their hands in the door there.
Yeah.
Well, because now here's also what's happening with the 8 teams. They're splitting the teams 4-4 into conferences, and so here's about that, and then we'll get to more of the cities real quick. So with the conferences, you now have the West Conference, which is Carolina, Denver, Utah, Cali. And then the East is Boston, New York, Philly, and Maryland. Now, people were asking questions about why Carolina's in the West, but, the Hornets were in the West Conference and they were over there. But with the conferences, now every team is going to should be, and again, I don't know this until their new format comes out, but they just alerted me that new gears will ride for all the teams. Going to go spend more money. But anyways, now with them having conferences, in theory, all 8 teams are going to be in the playoffs now instead of 7 teams going to the playoffs and 1 missing it. And now you're going to have conference finals. So now you got 2 separate celebrations: winning the conference, winning the championship. So there's that much more opportunity for marketing.
Yeah.
And now, depending on how it is, I'm sure they're going to have one team that has like home field advantage. But if they don't do that and they take Sloan's idea, and now you have a team that does the All-Star, you have a team that does the champion, a city that does the All-Star, a city that does the championship, and with having 2 conference finals, if you do 11 and 12 as your conference final series or your playoff cities for that weekend, there's a chance to see how you'll do there. That's just, I'm not sure how they're going to do that. There's a lot of changes coming. But moving on, Denver got the Outlaws. So Outlaws are back. But the Outlaws were formerly the Chrome, who were like, 1-8 this last season?
Yeah.
1-9? 1-9 this last season? But the Chrome have the number 1 pick. And right now, they'll be able to draft the number 1 player in the country, which, despite everybody assuming it's going to be Brennan O'Neill, who's at Duke, I still think it could possibly end up being Connor Schellenberger, who's at Virginia. Or Pat Cavanaugh, depending on how Pat does it.
That's my other man right there. Call back to the other episode. Go get Pat.
they were interviewing Chris Cavanaugh, and he hadn't done a lot during the game. And we were like, "Why are you talking to him? Go get Pat."
Why are you talking to Chris? Go get Pat.
So
Pat was killing their ass.
He's honestly, like, with the fact that Notre Dame didn't lose a lot of people to the PLL, Notre Dame could make a repeat. Like I said, college lacrosse is great because it's crazy. Notre Dame's got one of the best goalies in the game. And then if teams aren't careful, Army's going to catch them. Army's got some studs. And then Utah got the Archers.
That's crazy.
So that was an interesting thing for me. But again, with me, I'm biased. I'm a diehard Archers fan, as you can see from my jersey. So the way I explained it to one of my coaches, because our coaches were talking, and the way I explained it was, I understand from a business perspective, and then from if you step back and look at it, logical perspective, Whipsnakes, a lot of them played at Maryland and around that area. Waterdogs, a lot of them played at Penn State, Penn, or Princeton. Redwoods, I feel like because California Redwoods grow in California, that made the most sense to move them there. Boston, I said that like that's where the Cannons originated, so that made the most sense there. The Archers do train in Salt Lake City, and they are hanging around there. And then I believe a few of them have roots in that area, so I get it there. Denver and New York sell out every weekend when the PLL comes there, so they needed a team there. And then I said Carolina was like the one surprise. I would have thought they would have gone somewhere different. But I don't know. What about you guys? Did you expect Utah to get a team? Did you expect the Outlaws to get to come back when Denver got a team?
I thought Vegas would get a team.
It's not a bad one.
Like the Las Vegas Outlaws to match everybody else.
Yeah.
Like the Raiders, the Aces.
Yeah, that would have been dope.
That's not bad.
And it goes back to that marketing, though, that we've been talking about, because it's interesting. So I think what you were asking earlier, when the MLO failed or the PLL has done better, is with marketing. But the problem that lacrosse has had and still has is, who are we marketing to? So this is like my high. This is the same thing with Sloan said, that the PLL needs to hire me, because we're talking about this as adults, and so much of the time lacrosse is always just trying to leech off of kids, right? Like because you see when the PLL has a bad week, they're like, oh, there was this tournament happening, like youth lacrosse was happening, and every time I see this, I'm like, yo, imagine the NBA being like the Knicks game being like, yo, there was an AAU tournament in Brooklyn, so nobody came to the game. Like you looking funny at this person. Like, this makes no sense. Right. So it leads to that point. Who are we marketing to? Stop worrying about 14-year-olds and worrying about the 34-year-old that's got a job, that's got money, that might come and bring friends, their significant other. We're gonna buy stuff. We're gonna buy merchandise. You might buy adult beverages.
Also, I feel like they need to make the merchandise a little more affordable for people. Right. Because like the Method Man Wu-Tang collaboration, the hoodie's $90.
Right.
Like,
look, they know who they're marketing towards.
But
like, they're trying to get kids to buy it.
Who can afford it are buying.
You're right.
It's one of those. It's but they do have sales a lot online. I will say the sales have increased.
I got my Ryder Garnsey jersey. I got it for like $20.
Right.
Well, and then like at the games and stuff, a lot of like the interaction like that, like their social media team does, or like even like the players, most of that interaction is coming from kids. Oh, there's Ahun. Most of that interaction is coming from kids. So a lot of them, I understand why the kids get marketed to the most. And then Ahun, just to catch you up, we were talking about the team drops. So New York got the Atlas, Philly got the Waterdogs, Maryland got the Whipsnakes, Carolina got the Chaos. None of those teams were specific like to the cities, except for Philadelphia and Denver getting the Outlaws. And then even Utah, they weren't specific, but I imagine they're going to play in Salt Lake City. You got any like initial reactions to that?
No, that's dope. I'm guessing that they were probably pushing for major metros in regards to like what cities they wanted to put them in, obviously to simultaneously somewhat accommodate maybe some stadiums that they have already. And then on top of that, I think that, you know, it's also like, I'm not really familiar with like all the rosters and the players, so you know that might have some say in it, I would think, but you'd be a better
they alluded to that with some of these teams, like with they leaned into it a little bit with like Maryland and Philly and the Waterdogs, like the Whipsnakes and the Waterdogs. They kind of alluded to it a little bit, and the Cannons, just because like the Cannons did originate from Boston when the Major Lacrosse League existed.
Got you. Well, yeah. So I mean, like overall, I guess those are good places for them to go to. I know that possibly Utah might be, what is it, higher elevation maybe? So
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm in
Is that
Denver, so I got high elevation.
right? So that's where I was like expecting them to, announce like one of. I think you wanted the Archers. Is that right?
I did. But we got the Outlaws back, and it's called they're a rebrand from the Denver Chrome, and also the PLL partnered with Whirlpool USA. I'm not sure exactly what Whirlpool is, but that's what they said.
So is that their title sponsor?
I think so. Well, it says like "Welcome Home" from Whirlpool in each of these teams, like announcements on Twitter.
Got you.
And then the Redwoods got put in Cali.
Okay.
Is there so between Utah and New York, Philly, Carolina, Cali, Maryland, Denver, and Boston, is there any place you would have liked to see a team go?
I feel like there's maybe not as much like Southern representation. But again, how many teams are in the league?
8.
So then that's still like, they can have an expansive team or expansion draft, right? So then maybe that's kind of the upside to it, where I don't know, maybe I thought like a Texas team or something like that. Is there a Florida team on there?
No.
Nah.
Right. So that would be, you know what I'm saying? Because you would maybe want different environments for them to play in. Obviously, I think too, this is a fall sport. So, you have to look at like when the league's going to start the competition or how they're going to compete against what other sports or leagues might be going on at the same time. Or maybe they might look to try and piggyback it. I feel like,
The
of
season
course,
usually goes like I want to say like mid June all the way up to like late August. Like early September, I think is like usually like that first week of September is usually like the end, I believe. For
all
the
right.
season.
Yeah. So 8 teams starting. I would hope that they get to maybe like a 16 team expansion by 3 to 5 years at most. But I know that that's a lot of ask to try and double like what you already have in the league. But just thinking about how many players are coming out of college and potentially you're losing them to, if I'm not mistaken, there's a Canadian league, right?
Oh, the NLL, but they just dropped an announcement. So this is new. This is about their conferences. So, like I said earlier, Western Conference is Denver Outlaws, California Redwoods, Carolina Chaos, Utah Archers. Eastern Conference, Boston Cannons, Philadelphia Waterdogs, New York Atlas, Maryland Whipsnakes. It says teams will play their in-conference opponents twice and out-of-conference opponents once in the regular season. And the 2024 All-Star Game will take on a conference-based matchup for the first time.
How is Carolina a Western Conference team?
Well, because the Hornets used to be in the West.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Very, very interesting. The conference-based matchup is the interesting part. Brian, what do you think about that?
It makes sense. I'm still laughing at the Carolina being in the Western Conference. I mean, it works for them to say, "Well, the Hornets did it." That doesn't mean that it makes sense. But
that was literally what Paul Rabil said. He said, "Well, the Hornets used to be in the
right."
West."
I'm like, what does that even mean? Who?
So
Yeah, they're trying to create matchups, some rivalries.
So my question is, well, not question. I guess my observation is, depending on where specifically in New York, Utah, Cali, and Maryland and Carolina, what specific cities. I'm interested to see what the growth potential is because, demographically, us four all being men of color, being black men, there's not many of us in the sport of lacrosse. There's some, but not many. And I would like to see more, obviously. And I would like to just see lacrosse more accessible to everyone. And, you know, the way that a lot of kids are going to be exposed to the sport is having it be accessible to where they can go see it, where their parents can take them to. And so I'm hoping that, like, in New York, they're either rotating like we talked about earlier, or they're going somewhere that, you know, everybody can kind of go to.
You know what I think they could probably take a little bit from is I'm thinking like what the MLS or the NFL, where they've got like these the leagues that help to foster like the not only community but like also it's fostering interest to help push the sport further. So that's maybe something I could see them doing or at least trying to implement. I don't know necessarily, you know, what their plans are for league growth, for them making the announcements about, you know, actually having like cities in which the franchises are going to land. But then you're also looking at like, you know, what are their plans not only for like development of the league, but also like to outreach to the communities that they're going to be in, like you were mentioning. So maybe they could take a bit of a model from like the NFL, which I think kind of leads the way, and then maybe the MLS. So that is a possibility, but I would like to see, like you were saying, with there not being as much representation from like our culture in the sport, even though we have a lot of prolific players that have, you know, played at the collegiate level, arguably the greatest player of all time, Jim Brown, playing out of Syracuse, being a two-sport All-American, you know, like being able to kind of promote that, but then in the same sense too, you know, obviously the sport being a native sport originating, so you know maybe there's also some aspects of that as well. But you know, again, it's still early days because we're just now getting this announcement, so you know it would be interesting the next couple of weeks to kind of see what comes to fruition, what the developments come out of like each franchise. I don't know if they still have a similar model of like where the MLS, right? So the MLS owns like pretty, like you buy into the MLS. So the league collectively is owned by one specific brand, even though each team has their own owner. But I was thinking this, and maybe you can kind of give me a bit more info, right? So think about like how the PLL was traveling and all the teams were playing all over the place. That kind of led me to believe that like maybe the PLL has something similar with the MLS, meaning like, you know, all the teams operate as their own satellite, but collectively they're under the league's flagship.
Which is a little bit kind of similar. So with the home, and here's how the home cities change that potentially. Now, again, this is all speculative because we just got the announcement. So I'm sure the nitty gritty details are going to come out as soon as we get closer. First things first is this. I think I would like to believe this means new jobs are going to have to be created, because with home cities here, you're going to need to have offices and all that kind of stuff. So with the MLL, and I'm sure Brian, you remember these days, with the MLL, there were ownerships. There was an owner and an assistant and a GM and an assistant GM. And it'll be interesting to see if that goes back to creation, and then where some of these teams played, because like the Denver Outlaws were playing at Mile High, and much like Sloan said at the beginning of this, like lacrosse is still a niche sport. You're not going to sell out a football stadium playing lacrosse. So they like, and then it becomes there's another option for them to play at, which is Commerce City, where the Rapids play, which is Dick's Sporting Goods Park. They could play there. You could also have them, there's a few other places. You can also have them just have DU as their base of operations, because they sell out there every year where they play. So that's how Denver's set up. I can't speak to what California's got set up or what New York will have set up, but there are options for these teams, but it's more of like we've been kind of talking about. You have your options, but you might not want to go balls to the wall with all these options. You might want to choose a safe venue, a venue that you can sell out.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, Sloan hit a nail on the head, man. I don't know too many places, it's still growing in regards to like sport collectively in the US. So that's where I'm like, okay, let's see what's going to happen. Let's see what's going to shake. But I am glad now that like the announcement came to where like there's home cities. It'll hopefully create more jobs within each franchise. And then you'll have maybe some development where there's newer franchises that get brought into the fray.
Yeah. Brian, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think with them being a little more broad with a lot of team names like the New York, Carolinas, the Californias, that it gives them a little bit of wiggle room to kind of figure out areas. So like in Cali, do you want to go to Southern California? You want to be in the Bay Area? Like people from Oakland not worrying about driving 3-4 hours to go to LA. So it gives them the opportunity now to be able to see and just kind of play around and pick out markets that they want to be in. Because just like you said, when we were talking about with Denver, with the Outlaws, they were fortunate because when they were in the MLL, the dude that passed away that owned the Broncos, I guess he just had like a like and a love for lacrosse, so they were good. He could use all the facilities and stuff, but they don't have those relationships with all the other places. And a lot of the teams with the MLO operated out of their league office. So just like I said, it's cool that now maybe with individual teams and cities now they can start to build up home bases and markets to work out of.
Yeah, so I think what's gonna what could potentially happen. Now again, this is all just potential. Like we got to see what happens with their growth revenue wise. If the cards all fall in place and these teams can produce like they need to produce and can make the money they need to make to show the proper amount of growth. How long do you guys think it'll take before there's an expansion team? And B, do you think they're going to do one at a time or two at a time? And last part of that question, where would you like to see them put a team?
If they do, I would leave Carolina in the East and just add either Dallas, a team in Dallas or Vegas.
And then do you think they're going to add one team at a time or two teams at a time?
Just one. You can add just one at either Dallas or Vegas in the next 4 years.
Okay.
Because it's gonna create like the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna create new jobs every year. Kids are gonna graduate every year. There's gonna become a demand for it in other cities. And the cities that missed out are going to want a piece of that action soon.
Especially Midwest. Oh, man, they're mad. They're mad as hell.
I wouldn't be surprised to see, like, maybe a team out of Tennessee. Like, not necessarily, like, a big market because Dallas is, like, massive, right? I do think that leaving Carolina or making them transition to an Eastern team would work. I'm in the mindset, though, that trying to do one at a time may be an issue, but at least for this next round, maybe do two. But maybe look at like a Tennessee. I'm trying to think like where.
I mean, Ohio sells out when they were at Columbus. They were at Columbus, and then they, because they were on the Ohio State field. For one of their weekends.
I was gonna Ohio, like it's so hard, right? Because like we only have probably three major metropolitan cities, technically four if you count Dayton, but you've got Columbus, you've got Cincinnati, you've got Cleveland. And, you know, we're still considered small market. Like even for like FC Cincinnati being an MLS team, they're considered a small market team. So the fact that they won the like best league or best record in the league, they still had a lot to prove in the playoffs. Like they still made them do like a first round fucking 3-game playoff, like pre-playoff with New York Red Bulls because they're a bigger team. So, you know, like you said, it probably does work in Columbus. Um, you've already got, I think Columbus. I know that Dayton has like a double A team for the Reds or a triple A team
Mhm.
on the Dayton Dragons. So those always sell out. And then I know that Columbus has something as well. So it does work, right? Like it's a big enough city that I think they could get people to come watch in Columbus. But again, it's one of those things that like, you know,
You
what's
got to
going to be
do it
best.
right.
You're right, exactly. And like what's going to be best for the actual organization where they're not losing hand over fist and, you know, game day expenses versus like what actually is coming in.
Okay, Brian, what about you?
I'm thinking the Midwest, so like Michigan or Ohio. I'm actually a fan of the smaller markets. Is with lacrosse, like think of New York. There's stuff to do in the summertime in New York City. In LA, there's stuff to do during the summertime. So I think what helps you with the smaller markets, if you're in a Columbus, if they go to Michigan and they'd use Michigan Stadium because they have a lacrosse stadium, that smaller markets, oh, our team name is on there. Like if they're not the Ohio machine, they're the Columbus machine, that this smaller area that we're gonna go behind this team, we're gonna support this team. We can do this once a week during the summer. So I think that makes sense for them to have smaller markets. With expansion, it would make sense to do 2 teams only because if they do one team at a time, there's a bye week for one team. Lacrosse players don't make that much money. I can't see the players being like, yeah, we cool with not getting paid for a full week when we're already not making that much money. So logistically, I think it would make more sense for them to do 2 teams at once at first, and then maybe 4, 5, 6 years down the line, they're making more money. They're at 10 teams that they can then add one team at a time.
Okay, and then like that's all good answers. One thing I was just kind of kicking around in my head that I think would be smart is with is that you could possibly do. I mean, now again, I'm not a business person, so I'd have to ask whoever's the business person in here. Um, with you know, having like your city names or with being in a city, would it help generate revenue to like kind of partner up with some of these like local colleges or like some of these like big name colleges like the D1 schools, like with Denver? Would it make sense to kind of have some sort of partnership with Denver University, with New York? Would it make some kind of sense to have a partnership with like Albany or like one of the bigger D1 schools, to where one, you're getting those fans to attend, but also you're getting that like kind of like exposure to people in that kind of like area?
Yeah, they have to right now. They're already built fan bases. I know I'm being biased being from Syracuse, but Syracuse University leads men's and women's college lacrosse in attendance. And for the men's side, it's a significant margin. Like we're talking like 1,000, 15, 2,000 fan difference. So you start to be in these communities, work with these universities, Denver. The California part's kind of, I don't. There's no Division I teams in California, but if you can with these markets, that if you're able to, Carolina, you can use Duke and North Carolina, these already built fan bases, you market at these games. Oh, when the college lacrosse season is over, the team's here. It's already built in marketing, and lacrosse is small enough where they got to use these connections that they can.
Okay. Sloan, what about you? Hold on, he's muted. Hold on.
I fell into a wrestling hole. Something happened real quick, but no. What was the question?
Would it be smart for some of these teams to kind of partner up with the big D1 schools in the area that they're going to be based in to kind of get that exposure and possible generate more revenue?
Yeah, why not? Give out free tickets. College kids really ain't got nothing to do.
Yeah.
Well, that's your target audience right there. He wanted to get to where a point where it's tailgating outside.
No, that's true. Ahun, what about you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm on board with what Sloan just said, right? Like college kids, especially once there's like a downturn in, whatever college lacrosse, and if you're a fan of lacrosse in general, then you would want to be able to um, go to the games, of course. So there's got to be like ways in which the PLL can connect with. Um, like different colleges or like all across the US, to be quite honest, but especially within the Midwest, if you look at like all the Division I schools, most of them reside in on the eastern side of the country, especially when you're in like the Midwest. When you get out towards the West, then you look at like Division I schools. It's probably some state school, and it's very spread out across the map. So um, I think that like the PLL would really miss the mark, and they kind of shoot themselves in the foot for a while if they didn't have some type of partnership connection um, with any Division I schools that would be willing to partner up. And who the fuck wouldn't? Especially if you're like, hey, we've got a professional sports league, so we'd like to do some type of partnership with your university, nonprofit organization that you're working alongside, because that's what a school is. So any type of shit there, you can build those partnerships, probably have it donated to the school. The school then gives you some type of um, payout in some way, shape, or form. So it's a win-win for everybody, I think, in that aspect.
Okay. And then one last question for you guys, gentlemen, before we get up out of here. What does this what do you think that going forward this means for the league? And then I guess for you, does the changing of the cities switch up any previous fandom you might have had of some of these teams? Like, I know even though they're in Utah, I'm still going to be an Archers fan. I'm also going to be an Outlaws guy, but
I go wherever Ryder goes. That's all.
What about you, Brian?
I think it brings legitimacy to the league because for me it's a little bit different since I'm in like the hotbed area for lacrosse, so people are familiar with it. But when you're like with Sloan, if you're just getting into lacrosse within the last couple of years, trying to explain to people there's a pro lacrosse league, outdoor lacrosse league that travels. There's no cities that people kind of look at just like what are you talking about? So maybe for like a fan of wrestling, like the combat sports or something like that, you're used to just not being in certain places and you're bouncing, you're traveling around. But now being able to tie cities to the teams, I think it's a good look for people to be like, okay, I get it, this makes sense. And I think for the liking a team, like for me, I haven't had a favorite team because I'm more so with players. But I think for people, if you're in one of those areas, that they'll be like, oh, they might switch. But I think it would just depend upon how loyal some of these fan bases were.
Yeah, see, the Outlaws is what got me into lacrosse, and so I'm like, okay, well,
Yeah,
gotta
the
support two
nostalgia.
teams. Gotta
Mm-hmm.
support two teams. I got too many damn Archers jerseys to just to just drop them. Ahun, I know you don't necessarily have like a team, but uh, does them like having like kind of like set cities, is that going to get you to check it out a little bit more? And then like if they do put an expansion team near you, would that like further draw your interest?
I'll go in reverse. So yes, if they did put an expansion team near me, then of course I would want to, like I'd be more inclined to really pay attention to it. Now, if they put one in Ohio and it's close to Cincinnati, bro, I'm there, right? But I'm kind of like Sloan too, where it's like I'm still so new to the sport from like a fully knowledgeable aspect, kind of like how with you and Sloan in soccer, where it's like I'm more a fan of like the star players, right? And then as I grow into it and let's say the star player stays with the team for a long time, then I will follow that team because that's who that person represented. So, like how Sloan's with Mbappe, I'm probably going to be that for, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm probably going to be that for lacrosse, but I'm with him. Like, Ryder's the dude. So, you know what I'm saying?
Wherever he goes.
Wherever he goes, bro, wherever he goes. Now, I pray to God that they're nothing like the MLS where, like, the league owns the players' rights. So, like, if they
it's
really
not like
wanted
that.
oh, thank you, Jesus. Because if I find out that Ryder's just jumping, like, he's on the Archers for, like, this year, and then the league's like, hey, we're going to send you to –
I mean, the teams can trade him freely because that's what
yeah,
happened.
of course.
Yeah.
Of
All
course. But as soon as I figure out where that big Jamaican kid is going,
Stone
that's
Evans.
that's it. Stone Evans and Ryder. Those are my two right now.
He said it's up. Oh, all right, yo, hey, gentlemen, where go ahead and tell the people where they can find you, at on social media.
Sucio Sloan 217 on everything. Yeah.
Got it. Brian, what about you?
At Brian Knows Lax on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it.
Ahun.
Oh man, Instagram and Facebook fan page a.hun.theshogun. On Twitter a_hun_the shogun, and more than anything, you can follow CDB Multimedia. If you are listening to any of the pods, highly recommend going and listening to all the pods on the network because we got something for everybody. So CDB Multimedia, Charlie David Bravo, which stands for Culturally Diverse Brand Multimedia. So go check us out. Give us likes, stars, all that shit. You know what I'm saying? And then TikTok, a.hun.theshogun, I think, too, because I'm on there just dropping stupid-ass content.
Yes, sir. This has been another great episode of the Dre Lax podcast. Follow us on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at Dre Lax Podcast. You can find me on Instagram, DreConnor48. Do not add me on Facebook. That's weird. You can find me on Twitter, _Sir Lax-a-lot. You know what it is. Lax now, Lax forever. Yep, we're getting up out of here. Check out the other podcasts on the CDB Multimedia Network. That is the Sucio Boys podcast, which just dropped an episode today. The episode title is Air Mattress Energy. Go check it out. Sloan, Ahun, and Marty are hilarious as usual. Check out Sucio Sports with Jabane and Keys. That's coming up tomorrow morning. You can also find the Aim High podcast for your little daily dose of inspiration, dropping on Mondays. And then we got Four Corners of Commentary with Kyle and friends. And we've got a different angle with Kyle and Rod. The Shogun Soccer Sit Down with your boy, Ahun the Shogun, and the CDB podcast. I'm Dre, getting up out the way. Thank you for joining us today. We out.